Welcome to this new episode of What is New in the World of Blockchain. My name is David Orban, and I am the managing advisor of Beyond Enterprises. Bitcoin is often accused of wasting energy, and whether the uh, objectives of Bitcoin, of becoming the foundation, the infrastructure for financing the 21st century, is a useful goal by itself. Certainly, even if you believe that it is useful to ask if the sources of energy that the Bitcoin network needs in order to achieve its goal are renewable and sustainable. And to the degree that they are not, what is the carbon footprint of Bitcoin? Now, of course, this is valid for every other product and service too. And the ability to measure and understand the impact in terms of carbon emissions of our activities is quite fundamental in addressing climate change, hopefully, potentially becoming carbon neutral as soon as possible. Not in 2100, not in 2050, maybe 2030, maybe sooner, depending on the activities. And of course, unless you measure what is happening, you will never know if you are going to reach your goal, as Alice in Wonderland learned from the Cheshire Cat. So the reverse is also interesting. We can ask ourselves if we want to become carbon neutral, if we want to learn about carbon footprint of our day-to-day activities, how can we employ this wonderful technology, this new tool that is blockchain? How can that help us in this path towards better understanding how human civilization can exist in a sustainable manner on the planet? So our guests today, Laszlo and Mario, are actually actively working on a platform called Poseidon that is intimately related to these themes. And I'm excited to have them with us today in order to discuss their project, their platform, how they are approaching these challenges, and what are the next new things that they are working on that they want to share with us. Laszlo and Marius, welcome to What is New in the World of Blockchain.
Hi, David. Thanks. Pleasure to be on
they are
stage with
Hi,
you.
David. It's a pleasure.
Want to share with us. Laszlo and Marius, welcome to What is New in the World of Blockchain. So, what is that drove you to found Poseidon, Laszlo? How did you come about the challenge that Poseidon wants to address?
You know, it's actually really interesting to think about how it started and the first chats that I had with Poseidon, because it might be a bit different than most other blockchain companies in the world. I've been speaking over the years with many other founders, and I feel a bit unique, or in the minority when it comes to blockchain applications. A lot of the people I spoke to about blockchain, and a lot of the people I spoke to about companies that use blockchain seem to have started with the idea, hey, I want to start a blockchain company. What can I use blockchain with, right? For us, it was a little bit different. I was most of my life in investment banking on the technology side. I was writing software for trading and risk management systems. And I always felt very empty in my job. I don't know if you can relate to that. I heard that a lot of people in the banking world can relate to it. I just felt my day-to-day job gave me the funding I needed to live my life, but I was living outside of work. Whenever I went to work, I felt, this is not really what I want to do. And I felt, for me, nature was always a big part of my life. And I always like to help people, as corny as this sounds, but I always enjoyed doing good. And I always enjoyed making a positive contribution. So I stumbled across carbon credits and the world of carbon footprinting several years ago, before I started Poseidon. And for me, it was so interesting that there were indigenous tribes that worked together with nonprofit organizations in places like Peru or Africa or Indonesia and many other places in the world to protect environment. And they got paid for this work by selling an asset called a carbon credit. And I really thought that was such an interesting concept that people like you and me could protect the environment by supporting people that worked on the ground. And that's the basic idea, right? I mean, there's this whole conversation, what is a carbon credit? You spoke about understanding our footprint in the world, our carbon footprint, our greenhouse gas emissions that come from our lifestyle. And that's basically what a carbon credit is, right? It allows you to address that. And without going into too much detail, because we could talk days about this topic alone, I realized that this was an area I wanted to work in. So I left banking and I started Poseidon with the whole purpose of allowing everybody to participate in this, what I felt was a magical world. I found so much pleasure and so much fulfillment in being able to support tribes in South America, tribes in Africa, and indigenous people all around the world in their really honorable work of protecting the environment. And I was sure that if I could give other people this opportunity, they would want it as well. At that point, I had no idea whether it's going to be a blockchain company or not. It was not a focus whatsoever. And that's the interesting part about my journey, where I said that I feel a little bit unique, or at least I didn't find that many blockchain founders that started that way. So we looked at a problem, which was climate change. We looked at the solution, which was protecting the environment. And we looked at how we could use my experience, my technology knowledge, in order to bridge the two worlds, in order to allow everybody to support projects that contribute to fighting climate change.
Thank you, and that is really, really wonderful. Marius, what is your story? And maybe to add a little detail, both of you are in Singapore, so maybe that is also part of it in some way, of setting up a project with ambitious goals of helping the planet and finding a very interesting place in the world to do it from.
Thanks, David. So my story sort of around sustainability started around 3 years ago. Now, the catalyst actually to it was the move to Singapore about 6 years ago. Before that, I lived in Switzerland for many, many years. And as you probably know, David, living in Switzerland, you live in a bit of a bubble. And, everything is green. You've got rivers in which you can swim and drink the water from. You've got beautiful mountains. You've got everybody recycling. So you've got this image of the world that everything's fine. And then you come to Asia. And you take a trip to Jakarta, you take a trip to Manila, you go to Bangkok, and you can barely see the sun because of the pollution in the air. You look outside of the airplane and you see huge plantations of oil palms growing everywhere, where you had pristine rainforest growing before. You take a walk down the beach and it looks a little bit like a public rubbish dump. because of all the rubbish being washed up from the sea. And you realize, the world is not in a pristine state that one would expect, or one would have thought when you didn't have a closer look. So that's what started kind of driving me towards sustainability, and the fact that also I became a parent somewhat later in life. So you used to study reevaluating your priorities in life and so on. And that's when I started pivoting from a career in telecom and fintech towards sustainability.
So, Laszlo, as you executed this pivot, you started the Poseidon. Tell me about it. What does it do, and how does it do it?
I smile about the use of the word pivot, because I would actually call it almost a rebirth, to be a little bit more poetic and a little bit more drastic, because I mean, we had pivots in the time we were running Poseidon. I'll tell you about the pivot first, but when I started Poseidon, that really was a complete new start of my life, and I've never been happier. I wake up every morning full of energy and full of determination. It's a completely new life. Yeah, when I started Poseidon at the beginning, our goal was, as I said, to empower everybody to participate and to address greenhouse gas emissions. That was the initial phase. And I was at that point living in London. My last job was with a large tier 1 investment bank based in London. Actually a Swiss bank. So we have Marius who was living in Switzerland at that time. And at the beginning, the whole point was about greenhouse gas emissions, because carbon footprint and carbon offsets were a big topic at that time, and still are. I mean, now a bigger topic than back then, but it was already a really big part of the climate movement. And for many years, and still now, greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint is still, for most people, the only big focus when it comes to addressing climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. If you talk to a layman on the street, if you grab anybody you meet outside and you ask them what is climate change, most people will tell you it's greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming and so on. And they believe that that's the whole reason for climate change, and that's the main problem we're fighting. And it's a very big problem, but it's not the main problem. So at the beginning, when we started Poseidon, and when I did what you call the pivot, but for it was really a birth or a rebirth, we launched it in London, and the idea was, okay, we're going to provide solutions in this space, greenhouse gas emissions. I set up the company in Europe. I went to New York and I announced it for the first time in September at the Sustainable Investment Forum during New York Climate Week. It was really a fantastic experience to be there. I was speaking in front of the Secretary General from the UN, so it was really like, wow, okay, amazing. My first time public speaking, and I'm telling you, it was terrible. I was stuttering and it wasn't easy. It was really fun. But by that time, we had already figured out that blockchain would play a big part of what we're doing. But the reason we chose blockchain was because of the benefits we could get from taking environmental assets or nature-based solutions and tokenizing them. And that was back in 2017, where this was a really new idea. Just the way of thinking was completely alien for most people. And we created tokens that represented environmental action or climate action. And we integrated them in the sales process of goods and services. So just a few months later, so I had the initial idea for Poseidon in June 2017. In September 2017, I presented Poseidon for the first time, as I said, in New York Climate Week, a Sustainable Investment Forum in New York. And just a couple of months later, in the first part of 2018, we launched at Ben & Jerry's in London. It was the Ben & Jerry's flagship store in London, and it was fantastic. I mean, what an amazing first opportunity. So for us, it was a pilot. It was envisioned to run for 6 weeks, but it was so successful that we ran for, I think, 7 months, more than half a year. It was a huge success. We were really, really happy about the way the consumers reacted. And in short, what it did is you walked into Ben & Jerry's, you chose your ice cream, you went, you paid for the ice cream, and straight away, the carbon footprint of your ice cream was addressed. So technically, because I know everybody here on the live stream is a bit of a techie, so I can use a little bit of that. So
Absolutely.
technically what happened, after we did a pretty in-depth analysis of all the blockchain platforms out there, we chose Stellar because Stellar is very environmentally friendly. You mentioned Bitcoin before, which of course every techie here on the live show knows is very energy hungry because of the way the consensus mechanism works. So Stellar has a different consensus mechanism and is environmentally friendly. So we use Stellar. So you walked into Ben & Jerry's, you made a payment at the point of sale, and we have a live and direct real-time integration into point of sale systems. That's one of the secret sources that we created. And as you swipe your card, what actually happens is that a micro transaction or a micro contribution is registered on the Stellar blockchain in real time. A small fraction of the payment you make for the ice cream purchase a token, which is our internal accounting token. And that token is then in real time again exchanged or converted to the environmental asset, which creates on the blockchain an irreversible, immutable, transparent, traceable, and all the other magic of blockchain of the contribution that you made to a project. In our case, in Ben & Jerry's, that was the Cordillera Azul National Park in the Peruvian Amazon. So it's a fantastic project. And when we made that first transaction in 2018, we became the first company in the world, and Forbes wrote nicely about us, that we revolutionized the carbon markets. We were the first company in the world that brought carbon credits or the ability to channel funding to indigenous people that work on the ground to protect environmental assets. We were the first in the world that brought carbon credits to the high street in a shop to allow a consumer to address the environmental footprint of their purchase. So that was a pretty amazing feeling. So yeah, no, it was great.
That is really wonderful, and of course these pilot projects demonstrate the viability of an idea, and how companies can really embrace it. So Marius, since then, what are the developments that Poseidon had? How business grew over the years?
So over the years, since that prior pilot that Laszlo described, we've had the opportunity to also work with Liverpool City Council, for example. So that was a big client where we looked at and then offset emissions of the different agencies that the city was responsible for. So that was one of the highlights. Then in Switzerland, we got to work with a shoe retailer called Vivo Barefoot, and it was another wonderful example of let's say consumer-facing integration and service, whereby Vivo Barefoot actually decided to incorporate the emissions or that the product causes into the price of the shoe. So that was already implicit. So every time you purchased a shoe, you could that was already the carbon footprint was covered. But on top of that, we gave the consumer the option to also top that up or add an additional voluntary amount. And what we found at point of sale was that actually people were willing to go over and above what was sort of calculated within the price of the shoe, and were very, and the amounts that they were contributing to the offsetting were in some cases up to 90 francs, from what I understand. So, you know, you had, I think if I remember correctly, there was an average transaction of about six francs that people were contributing in addition over and above the purchase of the shoe. So we've had some very positive experiences in the retail space when you give the consumer the option and the choice to be climate conscious and kind of do good for the company or for the environment.
David, I think you're muted.
Thank you for alerting me for that. So, Laszlo, as you go about developing the platform and having more and more businesses and projects embracing your approach, do you find that it is something that is easy to explain, and is it getting easier? Who is more open to it in terms of brands understanding how important this is becoming, or even the indigenous people, the projects that you're helping by funneling these resources, who live in a different world, and for whom concepts of blockchain or even carbon credits are potentially very new, if not even alien. Where do you find it being a little more difficult, and how are you overcoming those difficulties?
Good questions. And somebody famously once said, when I actually spoke in New York, that blockchain is going to be successful once we stop calling it blockchain. It's very much like that. It's the same with carbon credits or with any environmental assets. It's really not the name that we use. It's really not the technology that happens. Sadly, it had to come to a disease like the massive virus that has now swamped the world, COVID, yeah. It had to come to that before the majority woke up to the threats of climate change. I think a lot of people prior to that, I wouldn't say were oblivious to climate change, but I think it was just not close enough. It was something that happened far away and probably at some point in the future. And yeah, is it really something we have to worry about? But how a tiny organism like COVID, like a microscopic organism, could really derail the world and derail society so quickly and on such a massive scale, I think that woke up a lot of people. And I think people now look at climate change very differently. People now understand that we need to protect the environment for very selfish reasons, because if we don't protect the environment, then we're on the line. I mean, if something small as COVID can knock us off our feet, imagine what happens if there are some bigger issues in the world, right? So I think people understand that now. And we have noticed over the last few years that the response was very different. 4 years ago, when I started talking about protecting rainforests, I got very, I can't call it differently, very stupid responses from people saying that, what are you talking about? There's so many trees out there. We don't need to protect trees, right? It was that kind of response because people just didn't think about it so much. It wasn't close enough to them. That changed. And people also understand that it's much more than just protecting forests. So topics like biodiversity, topics like freshwater, topics like waste. We're all aware now about the plastic waste, the plastic that's swimming in the oceans, the plastic that is drowning entire rivers and is causing so many problems already. People more and more understand that there's a bigger issue, and it's not just greenhouse gas emissions. That has really opened up the market for us very much in a very good and positive way. So we've been talking to numerous clients over the last few years. Marius mentioned a couple, but there's dozens we talk to on an ongoing basis. We're very close to launching several new products. So we've been working more or less in the shadows. You hear that a lot from new startups that work in a very quiet way, and then suddenly they come, ta-da! Here we are. Here's our product, right?
More in a stealth.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say is move out of stealth mode or out of the shadows into the light. We started in the light, so we came out very loud at the beginning. We had, as I said, we had Forbes, we had the Times, we had BBC, we had a lot of fantastic media out there writing about us. Liverpool City Council, through us, became the first, at least on the greenhouse gas emissions side, climate conscious city council or government in the world. That was a fantastic moment for us as well. That got a lot of fantastic press, was really good. But at that point, in 2018, I felt we were not ready for prime time. We were not ready to really push this out to hundreds of corporate clients or thousands or tens of thousands. We were not ready to scale, and it didn't have much to do with money. I funded Poseidon all by myself. So Poseidon is 100% bootstrapped, which also makes it a bit different from a lot of startups out there. So we didn't receive any outside funding. And I didn't want to grow. We had a lot of clients asking us, but I felt we don't have the right product. In Silicon Valley and in the startup world in general, you talk about the moat, what you have to protect your business. And I felt what we had back then could be too easily copied. There was nothing unique. There was nothing which couldn't just be taken over by others. And to be honest, there is not a single business concept in the world where nobody else can come and take over. That just doesn't exist. But I felt
it's a good recent example. It looks like the Chinese are now copying Elon Musk's and SpaceX's Starship, which, you know, if you want to talk about something that is hard to copy, potentially that would be it. So what is it then you can talk about that is new, that you have just announced or that you are about to announce, Laszlo or Marius?
So we've so far been focusing, or back 4 years ago when we launched, and the press that we received back then. And there are several speeches of me online where I talk about what Poseidon is doing. And at that time, the focus really was on greenhouse gas emissions, and the focus was on retail. How can people who walk into a store address the negative environmental impact, or at that time, the greenhouse gas emissions of the products and services they're purchasing? We now evolved, and we are now looking at the entire spectrum of the SDGs, so the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And what we're now about to launch is a platform. We call it EcoBalance, that allows retailers and consumers to address a full spectrum of the climate impact of the products or services they're purchasing. So think about the water footprint. How much fresh water was used to manufacture a product? the energy footprint, the greenhouse gas emissions. And it's very important to distinguish between energy and greenhouse gas emissions, because they are not the same. They are linked in some cases, but they're still different. And the waste footprint, what kind of waste is generated for a product or service. So that could be plastic waste, it could be chemicals, it could be all sorts. So we are looking at what we call the eco print. So rather than just saying we look at the carbon footprint or the water footprint or the waste footprint or the and so on, any climate impact, we call it the eco print, or the ecological footprint of the product and service you're purchasing. So that's a complete new evolution of what we're doing. We're looking at all of our competitors. They're still just looking at carbon. So again, it will be revolutionary what we're bringing out on the market. In addition to this product for retailers, where we're also launching several additional tools that retailers will work with in the background. So there's going to be some monitoring tools. There are going to be some dashboards they can use to get real-time insights. And everything is in the background built on a blockchain platform. So we're using blockchain as a big part of our platform for the transparency and immutability and for the real-time accounting. In addition to all that, we will provide tools to the retailers that will allow them to create reports and so on and so on. So that's on the retail side. And then we have solutions that we're launching on the corporate side that might also be used for governments. We are about to announce a few very exciting joint ventures, although not legally joint ventures, so it goes a bit partnerships, thank you, and cooperations with some really big partners. So we're very excited about that. And in addition to that, and the most exciting part, I think, for what we're doing is we're launching a mobile app, a fully in-house developed mobile app. So we're not using any templates from out there. We're not using any out-of-the-box mobile apps, because it's really annoying. You look at all these mobile apps and all these companies starting mobile apps, and all they're doing is they're using templates and they're changing the logo and whatever. But most of the mobile apps out there now, they all look the same, which really annoys me. So I'm a techie, and I've been a techie before I could walk. So for me, I think there's beauty in developing. So that's what we did from the ground up. We developed a mobile app. It's natively on iOS and on Android. And it's going to allow consumers, not just in a retail space, so that's our retail offering is separate, but this is specifically for consumers to understand their eco-print, so their environmental footprint across all the footprints like water footprint, carbon footprint, energy footprint, waste footprint, and so on. So the users of this mobile app will be able to understand their eco-print, to qualify it, to quantify it, and to address it. And we've built a lot of exciting gamification into it. I don't want to go into too many details here, because I want to keep a little bit of excitement for when we launch. But we're already in beta testing. We've been developing that for quite a while. It's a long process, and we involved scientists, we involved psychologists. So we really worked on how can we create an app that works, that gets people engaged, that's exciting, it's fun, and looks very, very beautiful. So
when are you expecting to launch it?
So current timeframe for us is at some point in March. I'd say between the middle of March and middle of April.
Exciting.
We are doing the internal beta tests already. We've now rolled it out to a wider audience, like friends and family and so on, as you always do with product launches. And it all looks fine so far. We could theoretically launch it in 2 weeks, but we're probably going to run it a little bit quiet for a while and then launch it later. But it's all built on blockchain. So we continue to use the Stellar blockchain. we're very excited with Stellar. We're going to have some integrations with Solana because, as you probably guessed from me mentioning Solana, we are moving all of our environmental assets onto NFTs. So we create non-fungible tokens for projects, for environmental assets. That's all I'm going to say at this point, but there's a lot of exciting news out there that we can't wait to tell. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for us.
And the name of the app is going to be Poseidon?
I'll let you wait for that too.
Okay. All right. So, Marius, how is your job going to change with the release of the app that will enable direct relationships with consumers all over the world? Millions of people, hopefully, who are going to be exposed to this gamified, deeper understanding of their eco print, and as a consequence, make purchase decisions, both of goods and services, as well as of the offset corresponding to them.
It's a good question. So obviously, I don't have a concrete answer to that just yet, because we'll see how all that evolves, how the app rolls out, and But I'd imagine, one big advantage of the app is actually the education side of the community. Obviously, creating awareness and education about what we're talking about here is a critical sort of first step. Media has done a great job already in the past few years, in part because of the calamities that we've seen around the planet, be it the floods in Germany, be it the bushfires in Australia. So finally, climate change and basically destruction of ecosystems and environments has sort of taken a center stage until obviously COVID came along. But so awareness has been created. But what we've also found is that while awareness has risen drastically, in the communities around the world, in society about the risks and the dangers of climate change, what we also found, looking at some research, is that people don't actually necessarily know what to do as a result. So they're aware, they realize, we are heading very much in the wrong direction if we keep going how we're doing, keep doing things as we're doing. But they're kind of a little bit helpless about, what they can do to change things for the better. And this is obviously where, in part, the app comes in. I think there'll be a lot of work around the awareness education part. On my end, speaking primarily to enterprise customers, there is, I find, still a lot of education and awareness building necessary. People are, like I said, aware of the fringes, and when it comes to the details, there's a lot of work still to be done to kind of increase their knowledge and also awareness that, in fact, it does not cost an arm and a leg to be able to live a more environmentally conscious life, right? So that's a big element. So it is very much this sort of education phase that we I think my work will be cut out in for the next sort of 6 to 12 months. You are on mute, David.
Laszlo, could it be that to some degree this is also a question of accounting and a potential issue of accounting reform? Too many companies still keep a rather narrow balance sheet of assets and liabilities that completely ignore the externalities of their production process. And whether they wait until national or global regulations impose on them the obligation stop ignoring them, or they take proactive action and incorporate in their balance sheets a clear understanding of how their product life cycle is part of their own eco print as a company. Well, the second can be extremely beneficial. Do you feel that it is part of your mission to catalyze this kind of change, both in the mentality and in the practices of accounting in companies?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point you're touching on there, and one that I, in fact, bring up with clients and with partners all the time. It's the question whether paying to protect the environment and to address climate change is actually paying, or whether we're actually getting a discount. And the comparison I like to draw is to going to the gym, right? So let's say you're in good shape and you're healthy. Do you wait until you get unhealthy and until you put on so much weight that you don't like your body anymore before you start going to the gym? We all know that if you wait until your body starts breaking down and you start getting sick, or you start having too much fat on your body and you're like, oh, I want to lose some weight. If you then change your diet or your lifestyle, or you go more to the gym, of course you can do something, but it's much more effort than if you would have just gone to the gym before 2-3 times a week, or just like a little bit, just every day a little bit, just do something and you just stay healthy. And it's the same with the environment. It's the same with climate. If you every day do a little bit, small steps, it's not about going and fixing the entire planet in one go. That's a massive undertaking, and like nobody can do that, right? If you would tell like, okay, guys, this week we collect all plastic in the oceans, let's go for it. Everybody will laugh and say like, forget it, there's too much out there, which is true. But if we're saying, every day, why don't we every day pick up one plastic bottle? And then you have a few billion people picking up a plastic bottle every day. Well, that's a few billion plastic bottles every day. And very quickly, you have actually done a lot. And it's an interesting conversation I have with companies is like, if you factor in externalities, which you correctly titled that way, the externalities that are currently ignored, the climate externalities, the social externalities, so everything that we together call the eco-print, if you put them into the pricing of a product or service right from the start, first, the product actually doesn't become 10 times more expensive. There is a small markup, but it's actually not such a big markup. But the magic that then happens is that you actually start selling more products, and you actually get better staff, you retain more staff, you have more loyal customers, because you know what? People do care, and more people care. And when you talk to skilled labor and to students, people who are about to enter the workforce, or people who are already in the workforce and they're looking for a new job, with almost certainty, they will tell you that climate awareness is a big factor in their choices. When they're thinking about whether they should join company A or B, and they know that one company is polluting the environment and the other company is protecting the environment, they will want to work there. A lot of people actually have left their jobs because they were not aligned with how their company was treating the environment. And you have the same with consumers. Consumers are now making more educated choices. But David, the important part there is, if you don't know which impacts are hidden within a product, you can't do anything about it. like going to the gym. If you don't know how many calories are in orange juice, you might think orange juice is the healthiest drink on earth, which we know it's not. Oranges are great with all the fiber and everything, but orange juice is delicious, but it's got more sugar than most drinks out there, right? But if you don't know that, if nobody tells you that, you can drink a liter of orange juice every day and you think you do something good for your body. And it's the same with the climate. You need to first qualify environmental impacts and social impacts. Then you need to quantify them. And that's what Mario spoke about with the educational part of our upcoming mobile app. When you start to understand how your lifestyle impacts the climate and how your lifestyle creates a footprint, it becomes fun and it becomes interesting and it becomes empowering and it becomes a really positive experience to make some small changes to become more climate positive or to become more climate aware and more climate conscious.
You mentioned plastic, and of course it's a huge problem environmentally. There is another project that I'm sure you're aware of, a plastic bank that have helped collecting, according to their latest report published just last month, 41 million kilos of plastic from the environment through their program and incentives. And just as Plastic Bank or Poseidon, there are actually many projects that are eager to catalyze a massive shift that is necessary in the mindset of consumers and corporations. What is your and this is our last question for today. What is your perception, Laszlo or Marius, around the broader ecosystem that you are part of? You spoke about competition, which certainly is real. You want to provide leading edge, value added solutions to your own clients, but at the same time, all of these initiatives going towards a common goal. And it is more like a blue ocean. As long as we can change the mindsets and create a sustainable world, we are all winning.
Yeah, I'm really sorry if I gave the impression of being worried about competition, because although I do use the word because we are a corporation after all, I do not see any of the other companies out there as competition. Now, that might be understood as an arrogant way of saying we're the best and there is no competitor out there. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is the problem is so massive, we would need thousands of successful companies in the climate space. We have about 8 years left to create significant, substantial climate action in order to have even the chance of survival. So I know this sounds very, he's sounding very very doom and gloom. No, this is, people don't understand this. We're not talking here about inventing something new, fun, a new t-shirt brand or whatever. We're talking about survival. And that's what people need to wake up to, is we are facing extinction. It's not the planet that's in trouble. The planet is fine. All life forms die and then new ones will come. The dinosaurs left and then we came, and if we leave, something else will come. This is about human survival. We need to survive. We're not as adaptable as people think. We can only survive in a very narrow temperature band. We can only survive with very specific environmental criteria, so the oxygen, the pressure, the temperature, so many things have to be right for us to actually be able to live. And if we're looking at it this way and we say, okay, over the next 100 years, humanity might go extinct if we continue doing this idiotic things that we're doing today, then there is no competition. There's no competition at all. I wish for everybody out there who is starting to work in climate change. There's some really great companies out there. One of my favorites are Pashama in the US, I'll call out. Great guy who started it, really like what they're doing. There's some fantastic companies around the world that work in the climate space. And I wish them all a lot of success. There is no competition. We all need to be successful. If there are 10,000 companies doing exactly what we do, and we're all successful, we're all still going to be also successful companies.
Laszlo and Marius, thank you very much for being here with us today. This has been a wonderful conversation and a really great call to action for everyone to join in this mission that is fundamental for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being here with us at what is new in the world of blockchain. Yes, we share the planet. The environment matters. As Laszlo correctly said, the planet is going to be fine, but humanity will go extinct unless we become smarter, more aware, better informed, better able to take decisions both individually and collectively. And then if we do, then of course our ambitions can also grow. We become better shepherds of this planet, and maybe we will be able to be ambitious enough to go and seek out other planets and what happens there. Looking forward to that, and I am also looking forward to see you at the next episode of our show.